Hey everyone, you ready for another deep dive? We've got a mountain of juicy celebrity news this week, and let me tell you, some of these headlines, wild.
It always fascinates me the way these little snippets from Hollywood can spark such big cultural conversations.
Right, like who would have thought Travis Kelce's new acting gig would have everyone buzzing about Taylor Swift?
Unexpected crossover for sure.
Total curveball. So we've got Kelch, star quarterback, ditching the football for, get this, Scrubs. He's playing a flirty nurse on this new show, Grotesquerie.
Okay, already sounds juicy.
Right. But here's where things get really interesting. The Taylor Swift connection is sending fans into a total frenzy.
Do tell.
So there's this scene where his character, the nurse, he mentions he loves Pop-Tarts but hold the frosting. And you might be thinking, so? But remember a while back, Taylor was spotted baking homemade Pop-Tarts, like for Kelsey's entire football team.
Now it's all clicking. Social media must be blowing
Well,
up.
oh, you know it. Swifties are convinced this little detail, it's a total nod to their whole relationship. Some are even saying she helped shape the show.
Well, adding to that theory, Ryan Murphy, he created the show, right? Confirmed Taylor actually encouraged Kelce to take the role.
Wild, right. I mean, you've got these two powerhouses both at the top of their game, and they're so supportive of each other. We've seen Taylor at his games. He's been spotted at her concerts.
It's that public display of support you see with high-profile couples. A real sign of respect, understanding each other's dreams.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sweet. Like, even with their crazy schedules, they still find time for those close connections.
Yeah. Speaking of, did you hear about Eminem's daughter, Haley Jade Mathers? Big news.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah, she's expecting.
Her first child.
Oh, that is so sweet. Congrats to them.
It is. And the timing is perfect, too, because remember how Eminem kind of hinted at becoming a grandpa in his music video?
Oh, right. Yeah, for a temporary.
That's the one. And that video was full of sweet moments. But for me, the best part, Haley surprising him with that Detroit Lions jersey, the one that said grandpa. I know, right? You could just feel the emotion. He was so thrilled.
Yeah, and he had those other little moments from the wedding sprinkled in, too. Eminem walking her down the aisle, seeing her in her dress.
Getting choked up.
Yeah. It was this really sweet, genuine look at that bond they have. And how far he's come as a dad, too.
Absolutely. It's nice to see, right? Like even these big stars, they still have those same life moments as the rest of us. But not every celeb news story is all sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
Things took a bit of a turn with the whole Diddy Combs thing.
Oh, yeah, his arrest.
That's the one. There's a whole lot of drama surrounding it, a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, it even pulled Rihanna in, which I don't think anyone expected. I saw that clip. Someone asked her about Diddy while she was leaving a restaurant. Awkward.
Super awkward. But of course, Rihanna, ever the queen, kept it cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, what'd she say? Like 2 words.
Pretty much just, that's crazy. Little smirk, and into the car she went.
Classic Rihanna. It's interesting, though, because they go way back, right?
They do, yeah.
Like what, the iHeartRadio Music Awards? Weren't they presenting together?
Yeah, they were presenting together. It definitely has people thinking about their history and what she might know about everything. Makes you think about how tough navigating fame can be, right? From big pronouncements to cryptic comments, it's a lot. And speaking of, did you catch Sophie Turner's take on child stardom? It's definitely a perspective worth listening to, right? Given her own experience. It's wild to think she was just a kid when Game of Thrones started.
And now she's a mom herself, so it makes sense she's thinking about these things.
Yeah.
The long-term effects.
For sure. She actually said parents should wait till their kids are 25 before even thinking about letting them into Hollywood.
25? Wow.
Yeah. She mentioned how the brain isn't even fully developed until then, like a frontal lobe.
Oh, right, that controls decision-making and all that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which makes you think, right, all that pressure, those decisions, and their brains are still developing.
That's a really good point. You don't always think about that side of it.
And Sophie's been really open about her own mental health journey, too, right?
Yeah.
Dealing with depression and eating disorder.
It's tough. And you can't say for sure, but you do have to wonder about the connection there between early fame and mental health struggles.
It's a conversation we need to be having, for sure. It's complicated.
It is. There's so many factors. But I think it's great that she's sharing her story. Helps to get rid of. All right. Ready to dive in today? We've got quite the mix lined up. Royal babies, celebrity confessions, even a little peek behind the curtain of the music industry.
Sounds like a good one. It's fascinating how these seemingly different worlds often collide. You've got tradition, fame, The weight of expectations, both inherited and self-made, all coming together.
Exactly. And we're kicking things off with a story that seems ripped from the history books, but with a modern twist. We're talking Princess Beatrice, expecting her second child, and the surprising news that this little one won't be getting a royal title.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head-scratcher at first, isn't it? You'd think royal titles are a given, but it actually all boils down to some pretty specific, and some might even say, outdated rules about lineage in the British monarchy. The biggest factor is that titles, especially prince or princess, typically pass through the father. Beatrice, being female, doesn't automatically pass those titles down.
Huh. That is interesting, especially in this day and age. You'd think those traditions might have evolved a bit by now, even for a family steeped in history.
Yeah,
It really makes you think about the weight of those titles and the traditions they represent.
it really does. And it gets even more, well, let's just say interesting. You see, royal titles for great-grandchildren of the monarch are usually reserved for the children of the heir of the heir. Basically, Prince William's kids are set, but after that, things get a lot less clear.
So Princess Beatrice's children are, what, further down the line of succession?
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is what I find so fascinating, even without the formal title. There's this undeniable sense of excitement and love within the family. Princess Eugenie is already embracing her role as Gigi, which I have to admit is pretty darn cute.
It is. It's that reminder that even within those grand palaces, these are still families celebrating new life and new additions. Speaking of families, can you imagine being the late Queen Elizabeth's 14th great-grandchild? Talk about a family reunion.
I know, right? It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? We're talking about centuries-old traditions existing alongside modern family dynamics.
It's funny you should mention that, that whole thing about tradition and modern life bumping up against each other, because it kind of leads us perfectly into our next deep dive.
Oh, so
Well, we're shifting gears here, from royal babies to the red carpet, with a story about Zendaya. And, get this, a surprising confession about her time on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, interesting. I did see something about that.
Yeah, and it really makes you think, right? Like, you'd assume that reaching that level of fame, you'd want to relive those big break moments. But Zendaya's take on it is a little different, shall we say.
Yeah, give us the details. What's this confession all about?
Well, are you ready for this? Zendaya hasn't watched a single episode of Dancing with the Stars since she was on it, back in 2013.
Wow, seriously? You're kidding.
Nope, not at all.
But she was fantastic on that show.
I know, right? You'd think those costumes, the music, those killer dance moves, it'd be hard to resist watching it all again.
You would think so.
Yeah, but, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Huh.
Zendaya has been pretty open, about her struggles with anxiety, the pressures of fame and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, she's even said she's terrified of the spotlight.
Wow, yeah, I do remember her saying that.
So it kind of makes her decision to avoid revisiting those dancing days make a lot of sense, like almost like she's protecting herself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to forget. You see all these celebrities, these glamorous lives, but we forget that behind all that, they're dealing with real stuff, pressures, anxieties, just like the rest of us.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that what we see on screen or in magazines, it's just a tiny sliver of these much bigger and, let's be honest, probably much more complicated lives.
For sure. And it makes me appreciate her honesty even more. You know what I mean? By being so open about it all, it challenges that whole narrative that fame is always glamorous, easy. Like, it's not always a walk in the park, is it?
It definitely isn't.
Eh.
Speaking of challenging narratives, our next deep dive, well, this one takes us from the ballroom to the recording studio. We're talking about a young Justin Bieber, a controversial figure, and a little peek behind the music industry curtain.
Oh, okay. This one's a bit heavier.
It is.
But important.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it really highlights the fact that, becoming famous early in life, it's not always, it can be a difficult path.
Yeah.
And having good guidance, people looking out for you, especially in that industry,
For sure.
it can make all the difference.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest. Set the scene for us. What went down? Okay, we've definitely piqued my interest. Set the scene for us. What went down?
Okay, so rewind with me. Way back to 2011.
Okay.
We've got a baby-faced Justin Bieber, just 16 years old at the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he's being interviewed, right, alongside Sean Diddy Combs, who back then was considered, a top music mogul, mentor figure, the whole 9 yards.
Right. I think I vaguely remember seeing clips of that. like floating around, back in the day.
Yeah, and what's striking looking back is how you see Bieber, he's mirroring Diddy's mannerisms,
Yeah.
almost like, an eager student trying to impress the teacher.
It seemed innocent enough back then. Like, oh, there's this young star. He's learning the ropes from someone who's, been there, done that.
Yep. Exactly, but here's the thing, right? We're looking at it through the lens of, 2024.
Right.
And Diddy's reputation, well, it's taken a hit, hasn't it?
It has. With the recent arrest, those serious charges. Wow, yeah, it definitely adds a whole other layer to that 2011 interview, doesn't it?
It really does. And it goes even deeper than that, actually. Sources close to Bieber are now saying that he was basically thrown to the wolves back then, partying with Diddy's entourage, no real guidance or supervision.
Oh, wow. That's a heavy accusation.
It is.
I mean, it makes you think about who's looking out for these young stars, especially in an industry that, let's face it, isn't always known for being, the most nurturing environment.
It's a really good point. The story, it's not just about one interview. It's not even just about one celebrity, really. It's about, I think, the bigger picture of early fame, the responsibility of mentors.
It is. It makes you wonder, can an industry that thrives on pushing boundaries, can it also be a safe space for these young artists? It's a tough question.
It really is. And, it brings us back to what we were talking about earlier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That weight of legacy, the pressures of fame, finding your way through all of that.
It's that reminder, isn't it? Things aren't always what they seem. A royal title, a killer performance, even a seemingly harmless mentorship. There are layers to all of it.
Absolutely. And you know what strikes me?
Yeah.
Even with all the complexities, the contradictions, there's still a sense of hope in all these stories. We see it with Zendaya choosing to put her well-being first, even with all those demands.
All right. So, are you ready to dive into some pop culture? We're talking about everything from like celebrity relationships to the future of fashion, all that juicy stuff.
It's wild how these stories, they seem totally separate, but they all kind of connect to these bigger ideas about fame and legacy. And how we experience entertainment these days. It's changing so fast.
Okay, so let's start with Shawn Mendes, because remember all those rumors after his breakup with Camila Cabello? Like, everyone was analyzing those Sabrina Carpenter song lyrics, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, finally, Mendes talked about it on the Jay Shetty podcast.
Okay.
And it sounds like they're trying to, figure things out a little more privately now.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think about the pressure celebrities are under with social media. Even Mendes has said all the online comments, they can really hurt a relationship in real life.
Right, totally. Like, even for us, right? Social media can make things complicated, so imagine that times 1,000 when you're famous.
Exactly, and everyone's got an opinion on your personal life. It's got to be tough to just be yourself.
No kidding. And Mendes even admitted to, being the one to reach out first sometimes. I thought that was interesting. Seems pretty mature, right? Like showing mutual respect.
Absolutely. It challenges all those old expectations people put on couples, especially when they're in the public eye constantly.
For sure. Okay, but speaking of navigating change and iconic couples, The Devil Wears Prada. It's getting a sequel. More Miranda Priestly, but with a modern twist.
I think modern might be putting it lightly. This is a whole industry that's been turned upside down.
Right. The first one, it was all about the crazy world of print media. But now, filming starts in November, so we'll see Miranda take on the digital age, influencers, online magazines, the whole thing.
I'm really interested to see how the power dynamic plays out. Remember Emily Charlton, Miranda's assistant? Now she's a high-powered executive.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
And the best part, the whole cast is back. Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, Stanley Tucci. They all look amazing.
It's almost like the sequel itself is this reflection of fashion media,
Right.
Print versus digital, the old guard versus the new generation.
I love that. Oh, and remember how secretive they were? Anne Hathaway denied it at first, and then Emily Blunt was all, what sequel?
Yeah.
They had us fooled.
Makes you think twice about what you see,
Yeah.
especially in Hollywood. How much is planned out versus, just how things really are.
Totally. It's all an image, right? And speaking of big, larger-than-life stuff, Super Mario Bros. They're making a sequel coming out in 2026. And get this, I heard they're going deep into, like, all that Mushroom Kingdom lore.
Oh, see, that's really interesting to me because it feels like, those huge movie series like think Marvel or DC, they're everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Building these huge worlds.
Yeah, it's like it's not just a single Mario movie now.
Exactly. It's a whole universe they're building. And now video games, they're getting in on that action too. They've got the stories to do it.
Great gamers have known that all along.
Yeah.
Those worlds, they're huge and they're full of, like, characters and stories.
And it makes you wonder, what does that mean for these movies? Will we see like more stories that connect or maybe like characters popping up in different places? That'd be cool.
I'm here for it. Oh, but you know what else has me thinking about, like, legacy and all that, Mr. Beast? The guy's everywhere. Right. But did you see? He's already got a plan for his YouTube channel, like for after.
Okay, yeah, now that is getting into some interesting territory. Ethically, even just figuring that out, it's kind of, it changes how we think about being online, what it means to be a creator.
For sure. It's almost like he's, I don't know, defying, like, limits of, well, existing.
In a way, I guess. I mean, he's made these videos and he wants them released after. One is even titled My Last Video, and then he wants them to keep coming out, like, every month.
Wow. I don't even know. What do you think about that? Is it, like, too much? Or is it his way of still being there for his fans?
It's a lot. It really is. But, it's not totally new. Remember Nikocado Avocado? He did something similar when he was losing weight, made videos ahead of time so he could keep, like, the same, I don't know, persona for his viewers.
Makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Like, where do you draw the line between the person and, like, the online person?
Yeah.
Especially now, with everything being digital.
It's definitely a question we're all going to be asking more and more as technology keeps, changing things. But right now, it's interesting to see how these creators are thinking about, I don't know, their impact, even after, well, they're gone.
Yeah, they're creating their own legacies.
Exactly. And it shows like this really human need for connection to mean something, even when you don't know, what's going to happen.
It's a lot. This whole deep dive, right? Love, careers, what it all means. It's been a journey. What really stuck with you?
I think, honestly, it's that idea of control, All these stories, they're different, but they all kind of deal with people trying to figure out a world where they're not always in charge.
I see that.
Social media, your job changing, even just getting older, there's this like push and pull between like going with the flow and trying to make your own path.
And that makes you think, right? If everything's online now, like forever, how much control do we really have over how people see us now, in the future? Something to think about.
Definitely.
Well, on that note, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, everyone. We'll catch you next time.